All right. So it looks like we got a pretty big crowd today. So I'm gonna get started. Um, can everyone see my screen all right? Just to make sure that's going on. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Alex, thanks for the feedback. Um, everyone who's online right now, the more stuff you chat in, the more I can teach you guys, and it's way more fun for me if you guys are sending in questions. It's interactive. There's nothing worse than being sitting here on the other line and feeling like you're alone. So really excited to get going with you guys. So let's start off with grouping, and grouping is the thing that really makes Sysdig really unique as a product. And the way that you change grouping is with this section right here. So right now I'm looking at my Kubernetes environment, and my grouping is based on my namespace name, then my deployment name, my pod name, and my container ID. So let's just look at one of the predefined groupings first off, and I can just look at my hosts and containers. So if I hit apply here, this is going to change my view to show all the hosts that are running, and then if I hit this plus button, it'll show all the containers that are running on that host. And then from here, if you select on any single row, it's going to open up a section below that has individual pre-built dashboards that you can select with different views, graph metrics, do a ton of stuff. We'll cover that later, but I just wanted to kind of get that right off the bat. A lot of users, sometimes when they first log in, they don't realize, hey, if I actually click a row, it's going to open up this whole new world of metrics and data that I can collect. So let's look back at grouping and actually build one of our own custom ones. So with Kubernetes, I think I want to really focus on my deployments first and then see what namespaces they're actually running in. So I can just delete this namespace filter here and then change this to include my deployment name, or sorry, my namespace name. And then let's look at the container image and then the ID. And the really powerful thing here is I can customize this table for however I want to look at my different services. When you guys are installing the agent, if you apply tags to your agent, that's a really good way to also, when you first log into your environment and you apply those tags, set up a default custom grouping based on the tags that you set up. And then anytime you're going from there, you can switch to it, switch around easily. But if you spent that time putting in the tags, let's put them to use by using them in the grouping. So now you can see I've got my different Kubernetes deployments. Let's open up this MySQL one. And I can see it now that it's actually split up. Okay, I've got my MySQL service. How's it running in dev? How's it running in, is it running in prod? And then the specific image all the way down to the specific container ID. And with this custom grouping, when you create one, the other thing, just to show you guys quickly, is you can save any custom grouping that you've created and then use it at a later time. So let's just name this one training March. And now this is a grouping that I can switch back to at any time. So I'll kind of have different troubleshooting ones set up, different ones if I want to look at services in different ways and things like that. We'll cover Teams, which is a awesome piece of functionality that we've added to the Sysdig Cloud product recently later on, and grouping is the heart of that as well. The other thing to know for the customers that have been around with Sysdig for a while, we're going to be adding the ability to share groupings across accounts later. So if you've created something that's really useful and you want to share it with your team, that's something that's going to be coming in the future. So now we've kind of now that we've kind of decided to how we want to generate our table, let's modify this and make it our own. So if we look at any column here, anywhere where there's a gear icon in the app, if you see that, that means you can change something. So if I click this gear here, I can set up different color coding thresholds. So just to make this look better, let's switch this down to 20, hit enter, and this is going to change the different panels and the colors that are shown there. So you can do any different thresholds and dynamically change these. And if you want to look at a maximum, a minimum, a rate, or an average, you can change this in the time aggregations or split up the grouping in there as well. To add a column, we've also added something on the side. Like I said before, if you see any grouping or any of these gear icons, it means you can change something. So maybe I want to add an agent ID column in there. And anything I select in here, that'll add a new custom column to that table. And it's fully searchable. So if I have a specific metric that I really care about in my environment that's not part of the default, just select that there. The other quick way to really change columns, or to change columns quickly, is to use these side selector buttons on the side. And so if I click on network here, it's going to switch my columns to show things like net bytes in, net bytes out, net bytes total, total number of connections, all automatically. So if you want to switch between file, network, just your general overview metrics that you've customized yourself, that's really a quick way to move between them. The second thing is, anyone in the audience running on AWS? Okay, Alex, awesome. Love it coming here. So we'll also connect with all your AWS services, and we'll be able to pull CloudWatch to pull data from there as well. So even though I'm only running on, I only have agents running on 4 hosts, I can actually see all the data about the different hosts that we have in our own AWS environment. So this is pulling from hosts that might actually be outside of what I'm monitoring, and then you can also get the data from the agent as well, and see the instance types, the IP addresses, all that kind of stuff. We'll also do some pretty cool things with ELB, and be able to pull demo information from there. I can show you guys, if anyone, if we have time at the end, we're actually able to pull some information from ELB and RDS that both of those services don't expose on their own. So we can see how many different hosts Amazon is actually using to balance your load, the connection going in, the connection going out, the full response time across that service, and then with RDS, actually getting really deep into the query language and pulling out top queries, top tables, top schemas, all that kind of stuff from your RDS service automatically. Cool. So with grouping, there's one last thing on the top of the Explore tab that I want to cover really quickly, and then we'll get down to the juicy stuff by showing you all the different views and metrics and how you can actually visualize what's running in your environment. So the last thing I want to cover up here is the time navigation. Right now I'm in a live window showing a 1-hour increment. If I switch to 10 seconds here, this is going to update everything in the table and everything on that page in a 10-second window. So our agent is pulling data every second and then aggregating it into 10-second packets, and then basically you'll be seeing this update every 10 seconds. You can switch to 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, but it'll still be live from within that time frame that you selected. If you want to go back in time, you can just easily click the step back button here, or select a specific time range, and then the aggregation of what you want to look at. So hourly data, 6-hour chunks, things like that. So let's go back live, and I'll switch it to 10 minutes so we're not jumping around a lot. And now let's move down into kind of the drill down section of our Explore page. So let's start off with MySQL. So when I click on MySQL here, we'll get a default overview of all the processes that are running, so I can see basic things like CPU, memory, network, the file bytes. But since it's MySQL, let's actually look at some application-specific metrics. And so if I click on MySQL Postgres, I'll see things like number of requests, number of errors, top queries, top tables, slowest queries, slowest tables, and everything that you do right here. If you have any application that you see that's running, you can apply these custom views and drill down in. So right now we're looking at how MySQL is running as a whole, but I really just care about how it's running in prod. So if I click on that here, it's going to redefine the scoping and show me data about how MySQL is running only in my production service. And then you can drill all the way down to a specific container, an image, and kind of see how it changes. So if you have like with your Kubernetes deployments, if you have multiple pods that are managing similar services, that's a really quick way to see the full list. See one pod that might be having a crash loopback, look in there, see what's going on. And we'll also have all that event data that I can cover later as well. So one of the things with when people are running containers, they're really thinking about their services. And we have some pretty cool default dashboards and templates based around the services that you're running. So let's go to this Java app here. And if I click on Service Overview, I'm going to get an aggregate service view about how my Java service is running. So my container count, my request count, request per time, net connections in, net connections out, and then actually network and request times based on the resources that are being used. So memory used, CPU used, and so you can really correlate all that information against each other. The other kind of interesting thing to see here is like, okay, why do I have 5.62 containers? As you guys know, with Kubernetes Swarm, things like that, you're going to be spinning up containers, bringing them down really quickly, and this will kind of give you an average view of what's been running in your service across that time. You can also edit the panel, so if you wanted to show a min or max instead of an average, that's something you can do and move it around with that. For orchestration specific stuff, let's actually cover those as well. And I know we have some people with Cube, some people with Swarm, so I can just show you the different ones there. Let me select prod. Besides having application views, we have a ton of different specific views for Docker, Kubernetes, Marathon, Mesos, all that kind of stuff. So since we're running Kubernetes here, I'm just going to click on the overview really quickly, and then I'll actually open up Swarm for you guys so you can just see what that would look like even though Swarm's not running. So if I click on Overview, this is actually going to give me a full overview of everything that's running in this prod namespace. So I can see which are my top containers, or my top services in terms of container count, the request counts for different services, so you can see WordPress by far is having the most requests per second, where if we look all the way down at my Mongo service, it's a tenth of what Redis is running. And you can select any row here to block it off, so if you only want to isolate or compare two different items, just click them and then they'll fall out there. You can see also things like slowest resources, top pods in terms of memory usage, file system, and all of this will be dynamically generated for your environment. The other really rich thing that's built in Sysdig Cloud that a lot of people don't know about is, so our founder was one of the key architects behind Wireshark, and so as you'd expect, we have a ton of really rich network data. So I can look at these specific network views and get an entire connections table for my Kubernetes service, and then drill down into a specific deployment, see, okay, Hypercube is talking to Cassandra here. Cassandra has some outbound connections through other services. I can see our Sysdig agent is pulling my Cassandra service here, collecting data from that. So a really nice, quick way to visualize your network information. And then I can also actually go back to the service level here and maybe hit HTTP overview, sorry, HTTP top request, and then let's move it to something that actually would have HTTP. And so with this WordPress service, I can see my different URLs. If it's a post or a GET, the network bytes sent, even errors for those different URLs that we have running, and then sort by these. So if I want to look at max to min, switch that down. This is all stuff that'll be dynamically generated for that service. Just to promise you guys, like I said before, with Docker, so if I click on Swarm Overview, we'd see the request count information, top services, top tasks. We're actually going to see some of the slowest resources stuff because that's kind of the same across both. Containers in terms of file system usage, all those kind of things. So before we leave Explore, any questions from anyone in the audience yet? Dexter, is there anything Kubernetes specific that you want to see on the Explore page? And then Mike, Matthias, Felipe, Eric, anything that you guys are interested in seeing on Explore as well before we go over to dashboards or something else? The best way to get data into the instance type column, so the instance type will actually just fill up automatically as soon as you've given us your AWS credentials, and we'll actually pull CloudWatch and pull that in for you. So that's something as soon as you've kind of validated AWS in our environment, we'll get all that instance type data for you automatically. All right, Dexter, so we are looking at running Sysdig on some EC2 instances. Are the HTTP stats, like top requests, available in that environment? Yes, so the kind of big elephant in the room here is we work perfectly with just vanilla Linux environments as well. So everything you see here we'll be able to do in non-containerized environments. You can actually choose to install our agent as just a process running on the host if you don't have Docker installed on that host, but I kind of always like to install the agent as a Docker container because it's fully contained, has the kernel module prepackaged, and it's just a really smooth install. But yeah, we'll be able to pull all the HTTP stats. If you have maybe databases running on any of those EC2 instances, we'll be able to pull really rich information there as well. Cool. Thanks for all the questions so far. You guys have been awesome. So let's switch over now. Actually, let's ask you guys, do you want to see dashboards or alerts next? And then before I do that, is anyone in the audience familiar with the Sysdig open source tool, or have you guys used that so far? Oh, wow. We've got a competition here. We have some people saying dashboards and some people saying alerts. So Eric, it looks like you're familiar with the open source tool, and you had asked about alerts. So, but Alex had gotten in first with dashboards, so I'm going to go to that, and then I'm going to cover alerts, and then actually go really deep into how you can leverage both Sysdig Cloud and our open source tool for some pretty cool alert troubleshooting. So let's move over to dashboards. We actually did some redesigns on dashboard recently, and then we'll be adding even more to make copying dashboards between teams and things like that even easier. But let's just move to the default ones right now. So we have a couple different types of visualizations. Let me just show that here. We have basically time series data, which everyone's used to. Your top list, so this can show top processes, top files, top URLs, things like that. And we're adding some changes in here, so you can say, show me the top 5, top 10, top 30. Right now it's default to top 10, but have that customizable for your different environments. Number panels, so if this is really useful. I use this for like CPU memory, database stuff, transactions per second, things like that. And then the thing that is awesome in your orchestrated environments are these topology maps. So that's one of the first ones I'll cover. And as you guys know, if you're running Kubernetes, Swarm, whatever, when you add orchestration, things get pretty messy. So what I'm looking at here is just a simple 4-node Kubernetes cluster. I've got 4 different EC2 instances, and I can go into any EC2 instance and see all of the different containers, all the way down to the individual process that's running inside each one, and the network connections. And so I can see, all right, I've got a Rocket Flannel container here, I've got my Kubernetes client, I've got a Java app, I've got a Mongo service, a whole bunch of different things that are running. And it's kind of a mess to make sense of what's connected to what, all that kind of stuff. And so what I really want to look at is a logical view of that system. And so if I hit on my Kubernetes logical map here, now I'm just looking at my different namespaces. And if I drill into this prod namespace, I'm only looking at my deployments and my services that are running. So I've completely abstracted away the hosts and are just looking at these services. And then I can drill down in further, see my pods, all the way down to an individual container, and then the processes and the memory usage of each process that's running inside this container. And the really cool thing here is basically all I did to generate this dashboard is when you're setting it up, think of the way that we used grouping before. So I'm just segmenting by namespace name, then deployment name, pod name, container ID. So the things that we learned in grouping are applicable across alerts, dashboards, setting up teams, which I'll cover later. Really, it's metadata is king, and as long as you're piping in data, you can really visualize it in any way you want. So let's actually just look at some of a standard dashboard that isn't just a map. Let's look at my database. So this is just a dashboard about my web app service performance. And you can see all the different types of panels that are running here. If I want to edit them, just click on that gear icon again. The scoping, which is what I talked about before, prod, WordPress. You can enable or disable the color coding here. If it's a time series table and you want to graph multiple status codes or something like that, or multiple metrics, you can just add another one on there. So if I'm looking at net request count, might want to look at net response. Let's look at response time. Or maybe net bytes total. Well, it wouldn't be a live demo unless I didn't hit a snag, so I'll check into that. And all you really need to do to add different metrics is to do what I just did there, and that should work out for you. The other thing is, with this dashboard, if I want to change the size of any different panels, I can just drag them around here. And if I want to collapse the side, give it a nicer full screen view, I can just click on this over here. So adding anything new, you just click the Add Panel button and then select the different visualization types. For any of the users who are on here right now that are older users of Sysdig Cloud, you can still go to Explore, and if you're drilling down into something that you think is interesting, so like if I'm in my Java client here, and I'm looking at net request count. With the old way, you could, and you can still add things to the dashboards like this, is anywhere where you see this pin icon, if I'm troubleshooting something or if I'm looking at something that's really interesting in my environment, I can just hit pin and then type in the name of the dashboard, and if I hit pin and open, it'll actually take what I'm looking at there and add it to any existing dashboard that I had running. So I just dropped that one in there. It's kind of nice. Like I have a kind of like a weird bug anomaly dashboard where I'm just, if I see something like, oh, okay, I want to pay attention to that to make sure it doesn't happen again when I'm exploring my environment, or if I'm pushing out a new feature. Sometimes I'll just pin something, and then I can really quickly get back to it and check it out on a dashboard. Okay, Mike just asked, so sorry if I missed this, but does Sysdig offer trending, and I would be able to threshold or alert on a metric based on its value over time? So quick answer there is yes, we allow anomaly detection with our alerts. So if you set a baseline alert, it'll look at it'll establish basically an envelope around that metric, and if the metric goes above that envelope, or even below it, depending on how you set it, then an alert will be triggered there. And then that alert will be set as an active one until that metric falls back within the threshold, and then it will self-resolve if you haven't gone in to do something. And I'll cover that when we get over into alerts. The other way that's really sweet, if you already know the services that you're running, is this dashboard wizard. So if you're running on Kubernetes or Swarm, or kind of have any of these applications running in your environment, my boss likes to call this the logo soup. So you just kind of pick your ingredients and throw some dashboards on there. I can see my different services, the different Docker dashboards here, ECS, Kubernetes, Marathon, and then just select one, and let's name this training namespaces. And if I wanted to set the scope to a specific Kubernetes cluster, or use something with namespaces, you can do it that way, and then just hit create dashboard. So this will automatically generate a brand new dashboard for you with some basic information, and then you can add different panels from there. So what we really did here with our different dashboards in the dashboard wizard is have spent a ton of time talking to our users, looking at their environments with them, and seeing kind of what they're using to monitor their different containerized services, and then built some pre-built templates so you guys can get up and running really quickly. So before I leave dashboards, are there any other questions? All right, looks like we're good. So I'm going to move over to events, because events and alerts are kind of correlated together. So the thing a lot of people might not know is we automatically will ingest every single event from Docker and Kubernetes. So if you have things like container out of memory events firing, containers being started, containers being killed, replica set scaling, crash loopbacks, all of that kind of stuff will automatically pick up and send those into Sysdig Cloud as events. The other type of events that we have are alert events. So this is just when an alert has fired, it creates an event as well. And those events can show up on dashboards, in the explore table, all that kind of stuff. And anywhere where you see this icon, it's how you look at events. So if I switch back, let's go to 2 weeks because we can see more. and click on prod. And let's go over to my overview here. And this show all. All right, I might need to flip something on my backend in this environment here. So yeah, the events will show up as lines on the chart. I think we saw some earlier that were going on there, and then you can tooltip across them and move along like that. So first I'll go over with alerts on how to create an alert, and then actually go back through exploring an alert that's fired. So if I click on Add Alert here, or anywhere where you see a bell in the app, you can create an alert. So if I'm drilling down into a specific dashboard and a panel, or I'm on a view, or if I'm on a specific service here, basically every panel will have this bell icon, and if you hit alert, it will set the scope to kind of what you're already drilling down into. And so right now, I'm looking at the average of net bytes in, just for my Kubernetes namespace prod. And like Mike had asked about before, you can set up baselines around this, and then select different metrics to establish that threshold against, and then have anomaly detection against that. One of the other ones that I've done with a lot of users are kind of uptime alerts or entity is down. So if you want to look at, okay, hey, there's this container that for some reason went offline and no connections are happening, I can go and do uptime. Actually, sorry, let's do an entity is down. And you can do this for a host, for a service, if you have done something with an agent tag for a web service or anything like that. I can do entity is down, aggregated across everywhere. Let's segment it by my container image. And actually, let's just set the scope to a specific container image. So maybe here, if I have any entity is down for my WordPress containers, and then a specific, if I segment it by container ID, then this will apply this alert to every single container that's part of that WordPress service. So I don't need to create alerts for a specific container. I'm just creating it at the service level, and then it'll apply to everything that's part of that service. You can do the same thing with service response times in Kubernetes. So if you want to set something with a request time for my Java deployment, that will look at the response time across all pods, all containers, everything that makes up that deployment, and then you can alert off that. The other pretty cool thing that we can do there is look at the captures that come from that environment. And so if anyone's familiar with the Sysdig open source tool, a capture is basically like a TCP dump of your kernel. So you'll have every single syscall that happened when that alert was fired in your environment. And the quick way to activate a capture, you just flip this button right here. I'd recommend kind of leaving it at 15 seconds or less, because since we're capturing every single syscall, you're going to be getting a ton of data from your environment. And then this notification can be sent to PagerDuty, Slack, SNS, email, all those kinds of services. So who in the audience is kind of familiar with Sysdig captures and the Sysdig open source tool? All right, doesn't look like anyone right now. So I'll actually explore an alert really quickly and then go back into our environment. If you see any alert that's running or that has happened, you can hit explore, and then that'll take you back in time to when that alert happened. So now I'm at yesterday. I'm looking at the drop that happened in network connections on the MySQL database, and then I can see the different alerts that have fired and all that kind of stuff. Cool. So let me drop back into a Sysdig capture really quickly and kind of show you how much information you can get out of there. So if anyone has ever used HTOP before, this look and feel is going to be really, really similar. So this is a capture that was taken when an alert fired, and you're dropped into a view of all of the processes that were running at that point in time when that alert went off. And if you want to look at the different captures that have happened in your environment, you'll have the full list here. You can just hit download and then just open it by typing csysdig-r, and then you've got the name of the file. So the cool thing here is I can see, okay, I've got all these different processes that were running on my machine at that point in time. So SkyDNS, Apache, Mongo, Docker, and then we have a ton of pre-built filters. So if I hit function F2, it will open a bunch of different filters that I can apply. So let's look at what containers were running in my environment at that point in time. I have a pretty big file here because I think I was running maybe 30-something containers on this host. Yeah, 32. So now I've got basically a list of all the different containers I had, the processes, the threads that were running. And the really cool thing here is like I can get all this data without ever needing to SSH into my environment. I can kill the container that had the issue, and then I'll have this really deep information to keep troubleshooting. So let's go into one of these WordPress containers, and if I hit enter, I'll actually isolate that individual container, and now I'm looking at the processes that were running inside of that container. And then from here, I can hit function F6, and I'm going to get a log of all the syscalls that were made from that process within that container. So I'm seeing the connections from Apache, basically the get time of day, heartbeat, the files that were open, the files that were read, all that kind of stuff. Sockets open, sockets that were closed. So you're getting, basically this is the same kind of stuff that you would get from your logs, but I can get this from a container that was killed and then replay it, troubleshoot it, send this file to anyone else on my team at any point in time. I can actually also hit function F5, and now I'm going to get all the I/O activity for that container. And let's make this a little more readable. So I can see the different reads and writes from this WordPress host. Look at what SkyDNS is doing. The MySQL connection for the password. All this kind of stuff you'll be able to get basically automatically and then filter through it really quickly. I'm really just showing you right now a high-level overview of our curses-based UI, but if you're also familiar with the Sysdig open source tool, you can type in specific chisels. I'll send you guys over a link really quickly to that. Cheat sheet. What we've done here is kind of done a mapping of, okay, if you've done this in htop, here's the equivalent sysdig command. If you've done this in tcp dump, here's the equivalent sysdig command. If you've done this in strace. And so when you have these capture files, it'll make it really quick for you to kind of, okay, I want to look at all the SSH user activities for this specific Kubernetes service. And then you can look at that, the top files, top processes, and drill down really, really deep. It's awesome for crash loopbacks and things like that to see what's actually happening inside your pods. The other way to visualize captures is we have a tree map analyzer. If you're familiar with the open source tool, it's kind of the quickest way, and you can get more data from it. But if I pull, let's find one that's shorter, maybe this 5-second capture. So now I'll get a tree map that's showing, okay, all the CPU usage by each process, and then if I were to drill down into a specific PID, and then I can go all the way down to the process arguments if you keep on going further. And then you can filter this to look at I/O activity, thread usage, tons of different stuff for your specific capture that you want to drill into. The last thing I haven't covered yet is Teams. So who in the audience is familiar with Sysdig Teams? Alex, Mike, Eric, Dexter, have you guys used Sysdig Teams yet, or are you familiar with them? Cool. So looks like Teams are pretty new to everyone. We launched these about 2 months ago after betaing them for a while. So the cool thing here is what Sysdig Teams will do is allow you to kind of isolate your Sysdig Cloud experience to a specific grouping of metadata. So kind of think of it as multi-tenancy on steroids. So right now, let's just look at this dev team because this is the one I'm going to switch to. Right now, it's limiting. The scope that I'm setting up here is based on my Kubernetes namespace, and it's just selecting my dev environment. You can choose either host or container-based filters. So if I wanted to do something based on an agent tag or a specific container image, so say I have some developers that are just part of my Redis service, they're all using the same image, I can set my container image to Redis, and then when they log in, they'll only see data that's relevant to that Redis environment. So for security perspectives, you can do this. If you have some people that are in charge of managing a web service, but they should never be able to see data from the database, you can do it for different organizational teams. So you have some teams that are managing maybe billing and auth, and they can only log into those. Or you can actually do it for dev environments and prod environments. So you can do that with your agent tags and see split up your environments that way. So any of the data and the metadata that we have for grouping, you can apply to these teams. And then when you log into Sysdig Cloud, you'll only see data from that. And each team will have their own set of dashboards, their own set of alerts. So it's a really nice kind of sandboxed environment where you can switch between the two of them. I really liked it, and a lot of our early beta users have liked it for kind of efficient troubleshooting as well. So if I'm looking at a problem with my database, I don't want to look at all the other hosts from my EC2 environment that are related to my web server or our different workers that are aggregating data over time or things like that. Like stuff that isn't relevant it just doesn't show up because you've set your scope to only what that service looks like. And the awesome thing here is switching teams is super easy. So right now I'm in my default team, and the default team can see everything. But if I just switch over to that dev one that I'd shown you guys before, I can only see data that's relevant to this dev environment. So no host metrics, just the services that are running in dev. I can't see my kube master, can't see prod, just that dev environment. And then if I click over on dashboards here, you can see that I didn't have the full list of dashboards for my other team. So if I'm managing a database, I don't really care about what my web service team is doing, or my front-end developers if they're looking at client connections and things like that. That's something that you can kind of keep isolated from the rest of your environment. Cool. So are there any questions on Teams? I'd love to kind of hear some feedback on this from you guys. If you've wanted, if how you think of using it with Swarm, how you think of using it with Kubernetes, or if it's something that is kind of overkill for your environment right now. We'd love to hear it with whatever you're doing. For current customers, if you're in the evaluation stage, you'll be by default have the two teams. So I'd say as soon as this call's over, go in, create some teams. It's also a really nice way to kind of expand the amount of people that are using Sysdig at your company. So if you create a specific team for different groups, it's really easy to add them in there. The other pretty cool thing that we're adding is for you Kubernetes guys. We have a kube watcher, which is this script that you can add to your Kubernetes annotations, and then it'll default create dashboards, teams, and things like that for you, and you can annotate that within Kubernetes. So for you Cube guys, I'll chat that link over to you. That's something that I've been on a couple calls this week with customers, and they're really excited about what's there, and then also the potential of how they can extend that. Cool. Well, that's all the time that I had planned today. I have the next 10 minutes to cover specific dashboard examples, alert examples, things like that. But thanks for joining, everyone. The questions have been awesome today, and like great audience participation. You made my day much better, so thank you for that. You don't know how many times you'll sometimes do one of these, and it's crickets. So thank you guys. And I'll still be online here if you guys have any questions or have stuff about. Okay, so the connection and the dashboard topology views, how are those derived from a Swarm setup? Yeah, so with that, let me. When you're looking at the different connections, you'll just change your segmenting. So let's see, let me switch out of my team really quickly. Default. So when I'm on this map, you can see the group by. So it's host.mat, container ID, proc.name. Basically, you just group by your Kubernetes task, and then, or sorry, not Kubernetes task. The Docker Swarm cluster name, Docker task name, container.id, and then proc name there. So all of these you can kind of flip around. when we were looking at our logical map with Kubernetes, we can see that it's namespace, deployment, pod, container, process, and that makes it so you can kind of switch it around there. All right, awesome. Oh, Mike, so can a team also be assigned when predefining dashboards? Is that what you're covering? Yes, so you'll be able to do that with the Cube Watcher. The other thing is when I'm adding new users to my account, you can also define what teams that they're a part of. So if I click on settings, click teams, users. If you've been using Sysdig before, the things that have really changed here are you can see the teams that a person is a part of. An admin is by default part of the default team. And so if I want to add a new user, I'll have the list of different teams that he can be a part of there, he or she can be a part of, and then add them to multiple ones. And when they're invited, they'll automatically be parts of those teams. So if I want to take them off the default and only want to have them on Java app and Cube, when they join, that's the only data that they'll be able to see. And let me, Mike, chat in the Sysdig. And here you go. And we also have some different videos, talks, things like that. For everyone who's still online right now, we have a ton of videos that are in these how-to guides. It'll cover a little bit of what I did today and then some other things where it's basically a 2 or 3 minute video about specific workflows that 99% of our users go through in Sysdig Cloud. So event correlation, topology mapping, alerts, things like that. And so this how-to video is always a great place to kind of look at different information. I've got a capture walkthrough there, notification channels, all those different things. And we're adding to this all the time. So bookmark that, and it's a good place to kind of keep up to date with what's getting new. And whenever we push out new things in the UI, we update all these too. The other thing to know is if you see the chat icon ever pop up in Sysdig Cloud, right back to us. That goes to a Slack channel. Everyone in the company can see it. We'll jump in and help you guys out. So if you ever get any chats or anything like that, please respond to them, and we're here to help. So you guys have been awesome, and thanks for joining today.